Don King from Last Word on College Football helping us break down Stanford taking on USC for the Pac-12 championship. And I alluded to it earlier, Don. It really hurts me as a college football fan that these conference championship games, except for their connection or perceived connection to a college football playoff spot, they've been devalued by the public. And I love the playoff to a certain extent. I have huge issues with the playoff. I do think it's an improvement over the previous system, for the simple fact that it affords two other teams the opportunity to prove it on the field. But I think it's a very flawed system. Don't like the system as a whole. And unfortunately, the conference championship devalued as it's perceived that this is not going to usher a USC winner into the college football playoff. But for you as a Stanford fan, your thoughts about just winning a Pac-12 championship, what does that mean to you and to Cardinal Nation?
Yeah, it means a lot. Honestly, it means a ton. And should Stanford win tonight, that'll be Shaw's fourth conference championship in his 7 years, which is kind of ridiculous. When you think about it, it is a source of pride. I don't know that it's realistic going into a season to say, yeah, we're going to make the college football playoff this year. But I think it is realistic to say, you know what, we're going to win our division and our conference, and then we're going to go out and win a conference championship. And it's hard for me as a long-suffering Stanford fan at that to feel too much disappointment in a season that ends with a conference championship. I think that's a good, lofty, and reasonable objective for any college football team, particularly in the Power 5 conferences. And if you win that, you got to feel at least okay about what your team was able to accomplish. Yes, there have been times recently, not necessarily this year's teams, but the 2015 team comes to mind, as does the 2012 edition, where one fewer loss and then Stanford is in that playoff probably, or, it has a shot to get into the BCS title game in the case of 2012, but that's the way those things go sometimes. I think I still believe a conference championship in a power conference is a really, really big deal, and would greatly enjoy seeing Stanford win another one tonight.
Yeah, so Don, if I can preach for about 30 seconds here, I would like to remind college football fans that there's an objective system in place here that we're talking about versus a subjective situation with a college football playoff. And I think that needs to be rewarded, that needs to be honored and credited, that yes, to have the goal at the beginning of the season to go to a college football playoff is somewhat unreasonable because you don't know what the selection committee is going to decide. It's a subjective system based on objectives, but a subjective system. Whereas we know that if Team A is better than Team B in the Pac-12 North Division, that there's a logical set of best win-loss record. If there's a tie, it's head-to-head. If there's a three-way tie, there's a logical system to determine who gets to go play in the championship game, and it's completely objective versus regardless. And I think the assignment is basically impossible for the College Football Playoff Committee. We'll be sitting here on Sunday saying that team got robbed, that team got robbed, and it's a legitimate gripe. I regardless of what happens on Saturday, Friday and Saturday, I believe that there will be teams that get left out that will have a resume argument to make against a team that was selected.
Certainly. There's no question that that's true. There's absolutely no question. Yeah, there are too many this year. And, we can do another show where we chop up, what fixes might be to that system. I've heard people suggest 8. I personally like 6. I don't think you need to go all the way to 8, but I think to your point, for each of the Power 5 conference championships to matter, and then for a group of 5 at-large member, I think 6 would be a terrific number. With a bye going to number 1 and 2, and then have a quarterfinal round, and then the semis, and then the championship. I'd love to see that, but we'll see. It's going to be a few years and several more rounds of negotiations between anything like that is going to happen.
Don, it somewhat strikes me as ironic that the one sport that can least, in a credible way, compare teams across the nation is the sport that has forced itself into a system in which that's what it needs to do to select playoff teams, versus if you ended the NFL season and said, we're not going to play the playoffs, we're going to select teams You would actually, based on their resume, and maybe say, we've got 8 divisions in the NFL, but we're only going to select 6 teams to go to the playoffs. So we need to leave out 2 division winners. You could do that more logically based on all those teams playing a number of times. You could do it more systematically than you can in college football.
That's absolutely right. That is 100% correct. And yet, every NFL fan would still hate it because it still wouldn't feel right. But you're exactly right. You could do it much more fairly in the NFL.
It provides for some great debate, if nothing else. College football is like no other sport on the field and in these discussions as well. Pac-12 championship game tonight. I'm going to enjoy it regardless of where the winner goes or given any consideration for college football playoff. That would be USC, of course.